Hi, today is the first of a three-part series on Scope 3 emissions. We're going to cover what they are and why they matter. Next week, we'll talk about double counting and how to approach measurement. So first, a quick step back. Scope 1 emissions are from fuel used in a company's direct operations. That's things like gas to heat its buildings. Scope 2 emissions are from electricity purchased by the company. And Scope 3 emissions are then from everything else the company requires to exist. They cover emissions from things like waste, business travel, employee commuting and home working. They cover emissions from the supply chain, from upstream and downstream transportation of goods or people to deliver services. And they cover the emissions created from the use of a company's end product or service. There are 15 categories in total of Scope 3 emissions, so why bother? It can be tempting to think that Scope 3 emissions are another company's problem. And to a certain extent they are. But if we're going to transition our whole economy to function well in a carbon-constrained world, that's going to require a lot of shared responsibility. Let's take an example of a business that manufactures EV charging points. This company designs the charging points, sources a load of components to put together, and then assembles those charging points in a building that they own. So all of the emissions from everything up until the point of assembly are classed as Scope 3. And then during assembly, the electricity used to have lights on in the building and power the tools required for assembly is Scope 2, and any gas used to heat that building would be Scope 1. Now let's say this same company switches to using contract manufacture, so it commissions another company to actually do the assembly of its EV charging points. All of those Scope 1 and 2 emissions now shift to being Scope 3. And that's why measuring Scope 3 matters. Small changes in the operating model can massively distort where those emissions sit. Join me next week to look at double counting and how you can approach measuring Scope 3 emissions.